Hi, I'm Dr. Joel Hunter. I'm an ophthalmologist, and today we're going to talk about one of the most annoying eye phenomena there are. Namely, why does my eyelid twitch sometimes? So maybe you're in that small percentage of the population who's never had an issue where your eyelid is doing that twitching thing. If so, I'm very impressed with your thirst for knowledge that you clicked on this video. The rest of us though, the vast majority of the population has had this eyelid twitching, these little fasciculations that happen. And it's actually got a real name. And that real name is eyelid myokymia. Now, beyond just being really interesting at the next party you're at and being like, hey, have you heard of eyelid myokymia? The reason it's important to talk about what it's actually called is that anything that has a name, it means it's a real thing. Enough people have had it that some scientists got together and said we should give this thing a name. And so in this case, those eyelid twitches that you get that drive you crazy, it's called eyelid myokymia. Now, why does that happen? Well, your eyelid is actually just made up of muscles underneath the skin. Now, the muscle specifically that makes up your eyelid, it looks really cool. If you've ever seen an anatomy poster of a face with the facial muscles, then you've seen this one specific drawing. There are rings of muscle that encircle around your eye, and they go all the way from right where your eyelashes are all the way out to above where your brow is and below where the lower orbital rim is down here where your eye socket starts. And it's got a name. It's called your orbicularis oculi. The eye part is easy because that's oculi, but it goes around the ring that encircles your eye. And so that muscle contracts, and that's what causes your eyelid to close. When it contracts a lot over many, many years over here, it causes wrinkles to form on the outside of your eyes. That causes crow's feet. But when just a couple of them, just the thinnest ones are contracting, you get this little eyelid twitch. You get eyelid myokymia. But why does that happen? So with most stuff in medicine, it helps to explain something that happens big on a macro level, stuff that you can see in the mirror or feel. If you get down to the micro level. And that eye muscle that we were just talking about that makes up your eyelid, your orbicularis oculi, it's made up of individual muscle cells. Every time you have an individual specialized cell, it gets its special name, and those cells and muscles are called sarcomeres. And the way that they work is they keep a balance of two specific electrolytes on either side of their cell walls. And those two most notably are sodium and potassium. Now, those are electrolytes, and electrolytes are just chemicals that are dissolved into our blood in order to make the machinery run the way that it's supposed to. They are by no means the only ones that matter. There's a lot of electrolytes that have to be perfectly in balance in our blood. These are only 2 of the main 7 that you check even when you get the most basic blood chemical panel. But these 2 happen to matter the most when we're talking about cells contraction, because there's this sodium-potassium pump, and it lines the wall of these muscle cells, and its job is to try to keep all of the sodium on one side and all of the potassium on the other and not let anything through until that cell is activated. And then the gates open up and the sodium rushes through one way, the potassium rushes out the other way. And when that happens, your muscle contracts. That fiber, which was very, very long, squeezes and becomes shorter. And you can imagine with that ring of muscle why that would blink your eye, because those fibers are becoming shorter. But what happens when they fire and we don't want them to? That's that fasciculation, that's that twitch, that's myokymia. Well, when you don't want them to fire and they do anyway, it's because there's an imbalance somewhere. The reason it happens so specifically with your eye rather than your thigh is because your thigh muscle is huge. Even if it's not that big, like mine, it's still much, much bigger than the very, very thin sheet of muscle that surrounds your eye. That eyelid tissue has the thinnest muscle anywhere in your body. And so anywhere that you would have a metabolite or electrolyte imbalance, you can imagine it would affect the most sensitive, thinnest tissue first. The 3 main causes of having eyelid myokymia, by no mistake and no accident, are they are stress, fatigue, and dehydration. All of these things wreak havoc on your metabolism and therefore wreak havoc on your electrolyte levels. And so the way to fix eyelid myokymia is to lay in a hammock and take a nap and eat bananas and Gatorade. And I'm only being kind of sarcastic, because if people actually got their electrolyte balances correct, it would fix the vast majority of cases. Now there are some where it still lasts, and that's because there's some sort of nerve damage, but there's about one of those for every million of people that just have regular, irritating, annoying eyelid myokymia. And so it comes down to what you probably already suspected. You need a little more sleep. You're a little bit too stressed out, and you might need to drink a little bit more water, and that should help. Bonus reel. You know what? For the people that do have ongoing, permanent, one-sided eyelid spasm, that's got a very specific name. It's called hemifacial spasm. And in those cases, interestingly, there's something that's just irritating your seventh cranial nerve that feeds all of the muscle tissue and causes it to contract. And so they'll just have this constant contraction of that tissue. And usually you fix it with Botox, interestingly enough. That's all we have today. Thank you for listening.